I want to start wearing my glasses more consistently, but every time I start talking, I feel like they fog up. So I've got my like cleaning cloth right here. But hey y'all, I'm Rylan. Welcome to my channel. I wanted to spend a couple of minutes talking all about the books that I read in the month of February. It has been a long time since I have consistently done monthly wrap-ups. For some reason, I've never enjoyed doing them, but I like the idea this year especially of keeping track of my monthly reads. On Instagram, I have a wrap-up template, so every month at the end of the month I share my like final wrap-up. I want to do the same thing for my YouTube channel. I just like the idea of keeping more cohesive track of the books that I've read, and I feel as though wrap-up videos can be a great way to do that. I read 12 books in the month of February, so not quite as good as January, but I still read a bunch. Unfortunately, didn't love most of my reads in the first half of the month, which is fine, but I still read a lot, especially for a shorter month, so I am happy about that, and thankfully I ended up finding some really fun books by the end of the month. In the month of February, I read 2 poetry, 2 dystopian, 2 fantasy, 2 romance, and 4 thrillers. So I kind of read a little bit of everything. 7 of these books were read for reading vlogs or book review videos, so I will point y'all in the right direction to watch those full-length videos. But had a good reading month overall, and I'm glad that I ended up finding a couple of new favorites by the end of the month, because beginning of the month was a big struggle in terms of my enjoyment of the books that I was picking up. We're just gonna go ahead and dive into these books in the order in which I read them in the month of February. So first up, we have Pretty Boys Are Poisonous by Megan Fox. I read this book for a poetry reading vlog, gave it 2 stars. Unfortunately, I just didn't understand this a lot of the time. A lot of the words went over my head. I feel as though it had potential for me to like relate in terms of title and like angst of relationships and like unhealthy relationships and how you deal with that, but unfortunately I just couldn't quite connect with what Megan Fox was writing about. There were a couple of poems that hit me hard. There was some pretty art in here as well, but unfortunately I didn't really feel connected to this one as much as I wanted to. Next, I read Catching Fire, which is the sequel to The Hunger Games by Suzanne Collins. I've actually read this book like 3 times. This is probably my 4th time rereading it, but I was reading it for a book club, a throwback book club that some YouTube friends co-host, and I'll take any excuse to reread these books because I get in my feels every single time. I truly feel as though Suzanne does a great job of like really bringing us into the world that she has built here. I love Katniss, I love Peeta. Their story continues in this book. Don't want to spoil it if you haven't read Catching Fire, but there is another Hunger Games. The stakes are so much higher this time though. Katniss's and Peeta's and her whole family's life is on the line, and and she has to figure out how to keep everybody safe and while also navigating her feelings for Peeta. So good, made me tear up all the time. The Hunger Games, I was tearing up every other chapter. This was kind of the same. I love Peeta, I love Katniss, I love so many of these characters, and like the more I reread these books, I feel the more emotionally attached I get to them. So this one was hard, but so good. I did give this book 5 stars, so this was the one light amongst a bunch of not favorite books for me personally, but loved Catching Fire. After Catching Fire, I read Ward D by Frida McFadden, and I gave this book 5 stars as well. So I guess I've enjoyed some more books in February than I thought in the beginning of the month. This was the 3rd book that I read in February. I have a book review video for this out. I will tag it above, but I really enjoyed this book. This was my first book that I've ever read by the author. I think she got super popular with her book, The Housemaid. I haven't read that one. That will probably actually be the last one that I read by her. I want to read more of her like backlisted, maybe less popular books than The Housemaid, but I read Ward D. Super interesting. I'll have my review video, of course, that has my like a full synopsis and my like full thoughts, but this one is just so captivating and addicting, and really I had no idea what to expect with this one. It's about a young woman who is a medical student, and she is on her overnight shift in the psych ward, and things are not what they seem. People are trying to convince her that everything is fine though, but really there's somebody out to murder everybody. it seems like. So that's this book, 5 stars, loved it. Yeah, super addicting, super bingeable, and I had a fun time reading this one. After reading Ward D, I picked up Forest Fall, which was also for a reading vlog. I had a NetGalley arc of this one on my shelf for like a year and a half now, so I needed to read it. Gave this book 3 out of 5 stars. Unfortunately, it is a sequel, so I don't want to talk too much about the plot of it, but I loved the first book. 5 out of 5 stars. Get so emotional over those characters. They grow on me. This book, I almost feel, for some of the characters, we take a step backwards in terms of personality and likability, and I don't know, I was kind of bored and felt disconnected from the plot and the characters in this one. I do love Rowan so much, but unfortunately I just didn't enjoy this one as much, which I'm really upset about, but it was a NetGalley arc that I got off my shelf, so that's great. But I'll have that vlog linked above. There are 2 other books in this video that are part of that vlog, so I'll mention that as well once I get to them. Next, I read The Inmate by Frida McFadden. I thought that after Ward D, I'd want to go on a Frida McFadden binge. I read The Inmate and I gave it 2 stars. I thought that this book included one of the most naive characters I've ever read about. For a grown woman who is a mother, I feel as though she consistently put her son in danger because of a yearning to make everything right, and I did not like it. I thought she made not great choices throughout the book, especially when it came to her ex. Yeah, I didn't love it. I didn't like it at all, but that's fine. It was also super bingeable though, so I had to give it props for that. I do feel as though Frida does a really good job at writing addictive plot lines, so I did zoom through this book, but by the end I was just like, why? But this book is about a woman who has a son, a single mother, moves back to her hometown to become the physician assistant, the PA, I think PA, yeah, for the local prison where her son's father is an inmate at, because he's been accused of murdering a bunch of people back when she was a teenager, back when she was still with him. And that same night she finds out that she got pregnant from that night. But anyway, she has a son now, he's in prison. They find each other in prison. She eventually believes that he's not the killer, gets him out, and it was crazy, but like not in a great way. And like, it was a wild plot, but I think there are big chunks of it that were way too far out there, and I feel as though if I was the main character, I would not have made the choices that she made. But that's just me. So 2 stars to that one. I do want to read more of this author's books though. I do find them super bingeable. I've said that like 4 times already, and I do want to read more. This one just was not the one I should have picked up, I guess. Not that I would have known that, but hopefully I'll find other books from her that I end up really liking, because this one was just a dud for me, unfortunately. Next, I read Pillow Thoughts by Courtney Peppernell. This was another collection of poetry / prose. I read it for my poetry vlog. 2 out of 5 stars. That vlog did not end up being a huge success. I found one book that I really liked, but this one, it's like I had gone through similar things to an extent that the author writes about, but I did not feel connected to them and by any means whatsoever. So that was very much a bummer. It's a big book about like relationships and loneliness and like how to navigate loss and grief and love and like breakups. But I don't know. I didn't love it, unfortunately. But I found one poetry collection from that vlog that I loved that I read in January, so that's good. But this one just was not for me. I also read The Resort by Sarah Ox, I want to say, and I also gave this thriller 2 out of 5 stars. I talk more in depth about my thoughts on this book in my NetGalley vlog, which I had tagged above a little bit ago. But this is a thriller about 2 young girls who both find their ways to this island in Thailand, this resort island, party island, whatever. Our one main character, she gets connected with people there. She falls in love on the island, but she's running from a past. Our other main character, she's there with, what's the word, like secret intentions that we don't even know about until like 80% of the way through the book. There are no hints about it at all leading up to the explosion between these 2 characters. So that really upset me, because I feel as though it kind of came out of nowhere and is very unplausible, in my opinion at least. I feel as though a lot of thrillers do a really good job at implanting seeds at the beginning of the book and like just little hints throughout them that make plot twists reasonable, that make them seem legit. That was not the case with this one, and I did not like it. I also thought that the epilogue was not great. So that's my rapid thoughts on that, but I do talk a little bit more about it in my reading vlog. This was a neck arc that I had. The book came out in February of this year, so go me. I just unfortunately did not like it very much, but that's okay. It's fine. Everything is great. After this book, we went on a more upward trend of not 2 and 3 stars. So that's good. After this next book that I'm going to mention, which is Hot Springs Drive by Lindsay Hunter. I read this for my in-person book club that I go to every month, and I actually liked it. It didn't blow me away by any means, but it was a quick read about this small town, these two neighbors, these two women who are supposedly best friends, but one of the neighbors has an affair with her best friend's husband, and from there, there's murder, there's divorce, there's loss, there's lots of very unlikable characters, which is the point of the book club that I'm in, so it made sense. I really liked it. It just wasn't anything like that blew me away, but I read it in a day because my book club was that same day and I hadn't even started it yet, so that's awesome. But it was a quick read. It was not one that I've ever seen around, so it was fun to read, kind of like a underrated book, but it wasn't my favorite, but I did like it, and I did have a good time talking about it with the people in my book club that same day. We're down to my last 4 books, all of which were 4 or 5 stars, which is awesome. But the next book that I read was 1111 by Macaulay Smeltzer for the Mending Hearts book club that I co-host with my bestie Stasia. I am repping the merch for it today. But this was our February pick. This is a reverse age gap small town romance between Reed and Via. I pretty much spend the entire vlog talking about how much I love Reed. He is 21 years old. I didn't know that 21-year-olds existed like that, but they do apparently. No, this is fiction, so they don't exist like this. That's the point of this book. He's fictional, which sucks, but Reed is a super caring guy who wants Vee to take a chance on him. She's very hesitant. She's fresh out of a divorce, very new to the small town, and doesn't know what she wants in life aside from owning this art store where she hopes to teach classes and kind of give people a space to build their own art. This is their love story. It's a very healthy relationship. There's no third act breakup, which is great. There is a little bit of unnecessary drama that I think is added into this book at a certain point that is pretty much 2 pages. So I'm mad that it had to be in there at all, but that's okay. I did end up liking it though. 5 stars. Love Macaulay Smeltzer and cannot wait to read more by her in the future. Getting down to our last 3 books, I read Yes and I Love You by Ronnie Lauren for a NetGalley reading vlog with The Resort and Forest Fall. Gave this book 4 to 5 stars. It was a super fun romance with some really great representation in it, and I thought it was funny. Jasper, who's our main male character, talked a lot before he thought, but everything worked out for them in the end. It was really entertaining, super fun, and I had a really great time reading it. After Yes and I Love You, I took a big break from the Hunger Games in the month of February. I started off with Catching Fire, ended the month pretty much with Mockingjay, and again was just crying. I do find this book to be the most boring in the series, but I gave it 5 stars regardless because, again, just being so immersed in this world and with these characters for so long had me feeling so sentimental and emotional over their stories, and I'm so glad that Katniss and Peeta are good in the end. The plotline with Gale makes me so mad every single time I read it, and I hate him so much. That's not an unpopular opinion, I don't think, but I will be very firm in my opinion that he's the worst. And I know that from the very beginning of this series, so it wasn't new to me, but I knew that he was going to end up making me the most mad ever. So don't love him, but again, love Katniss and Peeta. I just love this world, no matter like how like destructive and how terrible it is. Like, there's just something about the creativity put into this, like the dystopian vibes. I don't know, it's just so fun. Love these books. So 5 stars to this one because I loved it. And then the last book that I read, I technically finished it in March, but I'm counting it as a February read because I read like 720 pages out of 799 pages of it in February, was House of Earth and Blood by Sarah J. Maas. This was also a reread for me. I had several rereads in the month of February. This is a new adult fantasy that takes place in a like different world, but that's pretty modern. There's colleges and phones and like transportation and like, I don't know, it's fun. But it's about Bryce, who lost her best friend Danica a couple of years ago, and she's on a mission with this guy named Hunt to figure out the truth of what happened. A lot of things were hidden and kept secret, and while they're working together, Bryce and Hunt sort of develop feelings for each other. There's betrayal, there's romance, there's mystery, there's action, there's humor. And I don't know, I love this book. I reread it with Stasia, that way we could read book 2 together. I just am sucking at our buddy reads and have only read like 20 pages of House of Sky and Breath, but yeah, I did read this one 5 stars. I cannot wait to see what ends up happening. I don't love reading series, especially ones that like connect like with each book that is added onto it, but I just love Hunt and I love Bryce and I love Rune, so I'm excited to see what happens in the sequel. But I wanted to reread this one because it's been almost 2 years since I last read it, so yeah, that is this one. 5 stars to House of Earth and Blood, which is that really surprising for most people who read that book. They are obsessed with it and I am no different from them. But those are all the books that I read in the month of February. Had a pretty good mix of various genres, which I love to see. It's always good to mix things up a little bit and read more than just one genre in a month, because I have done that in the past. So loved that. Had a very good mix of books. Unfortunately, not as many great reads as I had anticipated or was hopeful for, but I ended up finding some really great ones, which I am very happy about. But that's what I have for my wrap up. Not as many books as January, of course, but life is different in February, so that's okay. I had a fun time, still read 12 books, which is awesome, so I cannot complain about that by any means. If you've read any great books in the month of February, please feel free to comment down below and let me know what they were. I love to hear your thoughts on some of the best books that you read last month. But that's all that I have for today's video. Thank you all so much for watching, and I will see you all in the next one.